I don't care who you think you are. You're nothing but help. Marcus Whitfield froze. The most powerful tech CEO in Silicon Valley, worth $12 billion, stared at the crumpled note in his palm. 8 words that would destroy everything he'd built. The black waitress who'd served his lobster had vanished into the crowded restaurant, but her message would change his life forever. Some truths can't be bought. Some people can't be silenced. And some secrets. They have a way of finding you. Marcus Whitfield's Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble floor of Le Bernardin with the precision of a metronome, each step announcing the arrival of power worth $12 billion. The maitre d' practically genuflected as he escorted Silicon Valley's most ruthless CEO to the corner table. The power table where 3 investors in $1,000 suits already waited, their faces masks of calculated greed. "Gentlemen," Marcus said, not bothering to remove his Armani jacket as he settled into the chair that commanded the room's attention, "let's make some money." The waitress appeared beside him, a young black woman whose name tag read Maya, but Marcus's eyes never left his companions' faces as he waved dismissively in her direction. "Lobster, the 28-ounce, and make it quick." Maya's polite, "Right away, sir," might as well have been whined through trees for all the attention he paid. The investors leaned forward as Marcus spread the merger documents across white linen, his voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper that had built his empire. TechFlow Industries, 43,000 employees across 12 states. We acquire them, implement our efficiency protocols, and within 6 months we're looking at operational savings of $2.7 billion. His finger traced profit projections like a conductor directing a symphony of destruction. The beauty is in the redundancy elimination. We can cut their workforce by 68% and still maintain productivity through automation and AI integration. The lobster arrived with theatrical precision, Maya setting it down with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly, a detail Marcus would have noticed if he'd ever truly seen her. Instead, he cracked the shell with silver tools while discussing human lives as line items. Each terminated position represents $87,000 in annual savings. He continued, butter dripping from his chin as he spoke. Multiply that across 29,000 employees, and we're talking about generational wealth creation. The investors nodded with the fervor of converts, their own appetites whetted by numbers that reduced families to statistical opportunities. Maya refilled water glasses around the table, her movements efficient and nearly invisible, just another piece of restaurant machinery, ensuring the comfort of men who would never know her name, never consider that she too had dreams, responsibilities, people counting on her. As Marcus outlined the timeline: acquisition by month's end, terminations by Christmas, full integration by spring, Maya's hand reached into her apron pocket, fingers closing around a piece of paper she'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for this moment, this man, this chance to deliver a message that would shatter the illusion of invisibility forever. Friends, before we go further, may I ask a small favor? Please subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us keep bringing you these stories, and reaching 1,000 subscribers soon is so important for us to continue. We also love hearing from you. Tell us, in the comments where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how our little storytelling circle is spreading across the world. And if you enjoyed the beginning, give this video a like, and let's share thoughts on the whole story together below. The paper felt like fire between Marcus's fingers as he unfolded it beneath the table, his attention splitting between the investors' excited chatter about quarterly projections and the 8 words written in careful script. "I don't care who you think you are. You're nothing but help." His fork clattered against the porcelain plate, lobster forgotten, as the message burned itself into his consciousness with the precision of a brand. Marcus? The lead investor, Harrison Webb, paused mid-sentence about market penetration strategies, his eyebrows raised in concern. "You seem distracted." Marcus forced his practiced smile, the one that had charmed Fortune 500 boards and convinced venture capitalists to empty their coffers. but his hands betrayed him, trembling as he folded the note and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Just processing the magnitude of what we're accomplishing here, gentlemen," he lied, his voice carrying none of its usual commanding resonance. The meeting continued around him like a fevered dream talk of severance packages that wouldn't cover a month's rent, healthcare benefits disappearing overnight, middle-aged employees competing with algorithms for survival. But Marcus heard only echoes, his mind replaying every interaction with the waitress, searching for clues he'd missed in his willful blindness. When Webb mentioned Christmas bonuses being redirected to executive compensation, Marcus actually flinched, earning sharp glances from all three investors. "Excuse me," he said abruptly, pushing back from the table with such force that water glasses trembled. "I need to make a call. Important client." He strode toward the kitchen with purpose that felt more like desperation, his $12 billion confidence cracking with each step. The maitre d' intercepted him smoothly, professional concern masking obvious alarm at seeing a patron of Marcus's caliber searching the service areas like a man possessed. "Sir, is everything—" "The waitress," Marcus interrupted, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Maya. Where is she? I'm afraid Maya's shift ended 20 minutes ago, Mr. Whitfield. Is there something—" But Marcus was already moving, pushing through the restaurant's front doors into Manhattan's unforgiving afternoon light, his head swiveling as he searched the crowded sidewalk for a woman whose face he'd never truly seen, whose humanity he'd dismissed as thoroughly as morning fog. The note seemed to pulse in his pocket like a second heartbeat. 8 words that had accomplished what congressional hearings, shareholder revolts, and investigative journalists had failed to achieve. They had made Marcus Whitfield feel something other than the intoxicating rush of absolute power, something uncomfortable and foreign and utterly terrifying, the possibility that he had forgotten who he really was. Within 6 hours of returning to his corner office on the 47th floor of Whitfield Tower, Marcus had deployed the same investigative machinery he typically reserved for hostile takeovers and competitor analysis. His private security firm, working with the efficiency of a Swiss timepiece to unravel the life of Maya Johnson, a name that had taken his head of personnel exactly 14 minutes to extract from Le Bernardin's employment records, the manila folder that landed on his mahogany desk at 9:47 p.m. contained a life story that read like an indictment of everything he'd built. Maya Denise Johnson, 28 years old, single mother to 7-year-old Zara Johnson, current employment including weekend shifts at Le Bernardin and weeknight cleaning at Mercy General Hospital, previous employment terminated 6 weeks ago from DataStream Solutions, a subsidiary of Whitfield Industries that Marcus had acquired and optimized without ever setting foot in their downtown offices. The photographs his investigators had procured showed a woman whose dignity radiated through exhaustion, walking between jobs in worn sneakers, her face illuminated by streetlights as she checked her phone for messages from babysitters, her shoulders carrying the weight of a world Marcus had never imagined. The medical records obtained through methods his lawyers preferred he not know about revealed the crushing truth. Zara Johnson, age 7, diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, treatment costs exceeding Maya's annual income by a factor of 10, insurance claims denied due to pre-existing condition classifications that his own company's algorithms had flagged for rejection. Marcus's hands shook as he read the final page of the report, a detailed timeline showing how Maya's termination from DataStream executed as part of his project efficiency mandate had coincided perfectly with Zara's diagnosis, how the loss of her health insurance had transformed a treatable condition into a potential death sentence. The irony carved itself into his consciousness with surgical precision. The same profit maximization strategies he'd celebrated in boardrooms had methodically dismantled the life of the woman brave enough to call him on his blindness. His reflection stared back from the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Manhattan. A ghost in an expensive suit, haunting a city full of invisible people whose names he'd never learned, whose struggles funded his empire, whose humanity he'd traded for stock options and quarterly bonuses. The note lay on his desk beside the folder. Those 8 words now transformed from mysterious challenge to devastating truth. He was nothing but help, nothing but another human being pretending that his wealth made him different, better, exempt from the consequences of treating others as expendable. The fluorescent lights of Mel's all-night diner buzzed with the persistence of trapped insects as Marcus Whitfield pushed through glass doors that had never welcomed someone wearing a watch worth more than most people's cars, his presence transforming the humble establishment into a stage for a confrontation that would redefine everything he thought he knew about power. Maya looked up from wiping down a booth in the corner, her cloth freezing mid-motion as recognition dawned across her face, not the practiced invisibility she'd worn at Le Bernardin, but raw, undisguised fear that made Marcus's chest tighten with something he couldn't name. "Please don't," she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of a woman who'd learned that powerful men's attention usually meant devastation. "I need this job. My daughter, she's sick, and I can't afford to lose another—" "I'm not here to get you fired," Marcus interrupted, his voice softer than he'd intended, though his $12 billion presence still dominated the diner like a storm cloud. "I want to know what you meant by this." He placed the note on the Formica table between them, the paper looking fragile under the harsh lights. Maya's eyes moved from his face to the note and back again, her fear slowly transforming into something more dangerous defiance. "You really don't know, do you?" she said, sliding into the booth opposite him with the careful grace of someone accustomed to serving others, though now she faced him as an equal. "You sit in your fancy restaurant, ordering lobster that costs more than my weekly paycheck, talking about eliminating jobs like you're discussing the weather, and you have no idea what that means to real people." Her voice gained strength with each word, years of swallowed dignity finally finding voice. "Those 29,000 employees you want to cut, they're not numbers on a spreadsheet. They're Maria, who's been saving for her daughter's wedding for 3 years. They're James, who just bought his first house and finally feels like he made it. Their me was me working at DataStream for 4 years, building something, believing that hard work mattered, until your efficiency protocols decided I was redundant." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest as Maya continued, her words hitting him with the force of physical blows. "You want to know what 'you're nothing but help' means? It means we're all just people trying to help each other survive, trying to help our families, trying to help our communities stay together. But you've forgotten that. You've convinced yourself that being rich makes you special, makes you different, makes your comfort more important than our survival. You're not a king, Mr. Whitfield. You're just another person who's supposed to help. And instead, you're destroying everything we've built." Maya's words hit Marcus like a physical blow, and suddenly the diner's fluorescent lights became the harsh bulbs of a Chicago tenement, the smell of grease transforming into the scent of his mother's makeshift dinners. And he was 8 years old again, watching his father, James Whitfield, come home at midnight with calloused hands and shoulders bent from 16 hours of cleaning office buildings downtown. The memories crashed over him with devastating clarity. His father polishing marble floors in buildings owned by men who never learned his name, emptying trash cans filled with the remnants of power lunches he'd never be able to afford, his dignity intact, despite being treated as furniture by executives who stepped around him like he was another piece of equipment. "Evening, son," his father would whisper, not wanting to wake Marcus's sleeping mother, his janitorial uniform hanging on his frame like a flag of invisible service. And Marcus remembered how his father never complained, never spoke bitterly about the men in expensive suits who looked through him as if he didn't exist, who discussed layoffs and cost-cutting measures while he cleaned around their feet. The irony struck him like lightning. He had become everything his father had quietly endured, had transformed from the son of invisible help into the man who made people invisible, who reduced human lives to line items and efficiency metrics. Maya's voice pulled him back to the present, but the past clung to him like smoke. Your father was James Whitfield, wasn't he? He worked with my grandfather, Samuel Johnson, cleaning the First National Building from 1987 to 1992. Marcus's breath caught as Maya pulled out her phone, scrolling to a photograph that might as well have been a mirror into his buried soul. Two men in janitorial uniforms, arms around each other's shoulders, genuine smiles breaking through exhaustion. His father and Maya's grandfather sharing a moment of dignity that transcended their circumstances. Grandpa Sam used to tell me about James's boy. How proud he was. How he worked double shifts so his son could go to college. How he believed that education would give you opportunities he never had. The words shattered something fundamental in Marcus's chest, and he saw himself clearly for the first time in decades. Not the self-made billionaire of his carefully crafted origin story, but the son of a man who had sacrificed everything so his child could climb higher, only to watch that child forget where he came from, forget the humanity his father had never lost despite society's determination to erase him. Maya leaned forward, her eyes holding his with unwavering intensity. He'd be ashamed of what you've become, wouldn't he, Marcus? The boardroom on the 48th floor of Whitfield Tower had witnessed countless corporate executions, but never had Marcus Whitfield walked into his own funeral with such determined composure, his transformation from predator to protector written across his face like a declaration of war against everything he'd built over 2 decades of ruthless ambition. The 12 members of his board sat around the obsidian conference table, like vultures, sensing weakness, their $1,000 suits and calculating eyes reflecting the morning light that streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city Marcus had conquered and now sought to redeem. "Gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying none of its usual commanding authority but something more dangerous conviction, "I'm calling an immediate halt to the tech flow acquisition and all associated workforce reduction initiatives." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft whir of air conditioning and the distant hum of a city that depended on decisions made in rooms like this by men like them. Harrison Webb, lead investor and architect of the merger, leaned forward with the predatory grace of a shark tasting blood in the water. "Marcus, I think the stress of recent weeks has affected your judgment. Perhaps you need time to reconsider." "I've never been more clear about anything in my life," Marcus interrupted, pulling Maya's photograph from his jacket pocket and placing it on the polished surface between them, his father's face staring up at men who would have looked through him as if he were invisible. "We're not machines optimizing profit margins. We're people making decisions that destroy lives, and I won't be part of it anymore." Richard Sterling, his CFO and closest ally for 15 years, stood with the slow, deliberate movement of a man preparing to deliver a killing blow. "Marcus, you're having some kind of breakdown, and frankly, the board can't allow your personal crisis to jeopardize shareholder value. The TechFlow deal represents $2.7 billion in operational savings. If you won't execute it, we'll find someone who will." The threat hung in the air like poison gas, and Marcus watched as Sterling's eyes met Webb's across the table. A silent communication that spoke of late-night phone calls and carefully orchestrated coup attempts. "You're talking about a hostile takeover," Marcus said quietly, understanding flooding through him like ice water. "Of my own company." Sterling's smile was razor-thin, surgical in its precision. "We're talking about fiduciary responsibility. You own 43% of voting shares, Marcus. We own 57% between us. And every institutional investor will back our play when they see the quarterly projections you're willing to sacrifice for your sudden attack of conscience." The call came at 2:17 a.m., piercing through Marcus's restless sleep like a blade. Maya's voice cracking with desperation as she whispered from a hospital corridor that had become her second home. Zara's in the ICU, her white blood cell count dropped, and they're talking about experimental treatments that cost more than I'll make in 5 lifetimes. Marcus was dressed and in his Tesla within minutes, but instead of driving to Mercy General, where his presence would only add to Maya's burden, he dialed his private banker and set in motion a financial transaction that would erase every medical bill, every insurance copay, every pharmaceutical cost standing between a 7-year-old girl and her chance at life. The anonymous donation appeared in the hospital's accounts by dawn, labeled simply as coming from the James Whitfield Foundation, a charity Marcus created with 3 phone calls and a wire transfer that represented pocket change to a billionaire, but everything to a mother. Watching her daughter fight for breath behind glass walls and monitors that beeped like digital hymns, Maya discovered the truth when Dr. Patterson pulled her aside the next evening, explaining that Zara's treatment plan had been fully funded by a mysterious benefactor, and Maya's keen intelligence, the same intuition that had driven her to slip a note to a powerful stranger, immediately connected the dots between Marcus's sudden appearance in her life and this miraculous financial intervention. She found him in the hospital cafeteria 3 days later, slumped over a cup of coffee that had grown cold hours ago. His expensive suit wrinkled from sleeping in uncomfortable chairs, his billionaire's composure replaced by the hollow exhaustion of a man keeping vigil with every other parent who'd walked these halls. "You can't buy your way out of this," Maya said, sliding into the plastic chair across from him, her voice carrying the steel that came from a week of fighting for her daughter's life while fighting her own pride. "You think writing a check fixes everything? Makes you the hero of this story?" Marcus looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. The weight of watching Zara sleep through machines breathing, for her having stripped away every layer of corporate armor he'd ever worn. "I just wanted to help. Your daughter, she shouldn't suffer because of my choices, my failures." Maya leaned forward, her finger pointing at his chest with the precision of a surgeon targeting a tumor. "My daughter is one child, Marcus. One. But there are thousands of children whose parents you're about to fire, whose insurance you're about to cancel, whose futures you're about to destroy so your investors can buy bigger yachts. If you really want to help, if you really want to prove you've changed, then don't save just my baby, save all of them." The final board meeting began at 9:00 a.m. sharp on a Tuesday that would either resurrect Marcus Whitfield's soul or bury his empire. The same obsidian conference table that had witnessed countless corporate victories now serving as an altar, where he would sacrifice everything he'd spent 20 years building for something far more valuable than money. The 12 board members sat like a tribunal of greed, their faces masks of barely contained anticipation as they prepared to execute the coup that would remove their inconveniently conscience-stricken CEO and install Richard Sterling as a more compliant puppet willing to dance to the tune of maximum profit extraction. "Gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying the quiet strength of a man who had finally found his true north. "Before we discuss my removal, I have several executive orders to announce." Harrison Webb started to interrupt, but Marcus held up his hand with the authority of someone who still technically controlled the company he'd built from nothing. "Effective immediately. I'm cancelling the TechFlow acquisition, implementing a company-wide minimum wage of $25 per hour, reinstating every employee terminated under Project Efficiency with full back pay and benefits, and converting our automated customer service systems back to human representatives." The boardroom erupted into chaos, voices rising like the sound of a stock market crash. But Marcus continued speaking with the calm of a man walking through fire toward redemption. "Furthermore, I'm divesting my personal holdings in 3 subsidiary companies that have engaged in predatory lending practices, redirecting $2 billion from executive compensation packages into employee profit-sharing programs, and establishing mandatory mental health coverage for all staff and their families. Sterling shot to his feet, his face purple with rage that looked almost apoplectic. "This is financial suicide. You're destroying everything we've built. Everything our shareholders have invested in." Marcus smiled then, an expression that hadn't crossed his face since childhood, pure and untainted by the calculations that had governed his adult life. "I'm destroying a machine that turns human suffering into stock dividends, Richard. I'm choosing to remember that we're supposed to help each other, not exploit each other." The vote was swift and merciless 11-1, with only Marcus voting to support his own vision of corporate humanity, and as Sterling called for security to escort him from the building, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: the lightness of a man whose actions finally matched his father's dignity. He walked out of Whitfield Tower for the last time, carrying only his father's photograph and Maya's note, leaving behind $12 billion but taking with him something infinitely more valuable: the knowledge that James Whitfield's son had finally remembered who he was supposed to be. 6 months after losing everything that had once defined him, Marcus Whitfield found himself in a converted warehouse in Queens, where the James Whitfield Foundation operated with the efficiency of love rather than profit, its mission simple and revolutionary: ensuring that no working family would ever again face the choice between paying rent and paying for medical care, between putting food on the table and keeping the lights on. The Foundation's modest offices buzzed with the energy of former DataStream employees who had joined Marcus in his new mission, their expertise in data analysis now deployed to identify families in crisis rather than employees to terminate, their algorithms designed to build communities rather than maximize shareholder value. Marcus looked up from his desk, a simple folding table that would have horrified his former self, to see Maya Johnson standing in the doorway, her hospital scrubs replaced by jeans and a sweater, her face carrying the radiant exhaustion of a mother whose daughter had been declared cancer-free just 2 weeks earlier. "I didn't come to thank you for the money," Maya said, settling into the metal chair across from him with the same dignity she'd carried while serving lobster to men who thought her invisible. "Zara's alive because of skilled doctors and her own fighting spirit, not because some billionaire wrote a check." Marcus nodded, understanding flowing between them like a current of recognition, two people who had found their way back to the fundamental truth that wealth meant nothing if it wasn't shared, that power was meaningless unless it lifted others. "I came to thank you for remembering," Maya continued, her voice soft but strong. "That note I gave you, you're nothing but help. It wasn't an insult. It was my grandfather's favorite saying, something he taught me when I was Zara's age and angry about being poor, about people treating us like we didn't matter." She pulled out the same photograph she'd shown him in the diner, her grandfather and Marcus's father smiling with their arms around each other's shoulders. "He used to tell me that every person on this earth is nothing but help, that we're all here to help each other survive, to help each other succeed, to help each other remember our humanity when the world tries to make us forget." Marcus felt tears. He hadn't cried since childhood, welling in his eyes, as the full meaning of her words settled over him like a benediction. "Your father understood that," Maya said, standing to leave. "He never forgot that being human means being help to others, and for a while you forgot too. But now you remember, and that's worth more than all the money in the world." As she walked away, Marcus looked around at the bustling Foundation office, at former enemies working side by side to heal the wounds his old life had created, and realized that Maya was right. He wasn't Marcus Whitfield, billionaire CEO, anymore. He was simply help, and for the first time in decades, that was enough.